Okay,
All righty.
we'll just start. Welcome to Alexa's Input. Today I'm talking with Bruno Aziza. Did I say your last name right?
That's correct. Yeah, Aziza.
Okay. Just want to make sure. About data and analytics. Hi, Bruno. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey, Alexa, how are you?
I'm good.
I would like to introduce myself. Of course, I'm happy to do that. So my name is Bruno Aziza. My last name is Aziza. The reason I'm saying that is because it reads forward and backwards the same way. It's actually something I discovered, if you believe it. I was presenting to a customer and they said, wait a second, I had never thought of it. This was 15 years ago, one of my presentations at Microsoft. And so I use it now because it's not an easy last name to remember, but that's how people can find me online. Bruno Mars, and Aziza, Aziza, reads forward and backwards the same way. Pretty straightforward way to remember me.
I love that. So first I want to ask you a bit about books. I'm a book nerd. I know
Sure.
you're a book nerd. So what are you reading and what do you like?
I am a book nerd, and it's funny because it's a passion that didn't develop when I was really young. I actually had issues reading when I was a child. I wasn't a very fast reader, but as I tried to develop that, I ended up picking up books a lot. So I have a few books for you today. The one that I know we have in common is this one, The Power of Habit. And
I just started reading it.
There's a bunch of books on habits, and this one is really kind of, I think, the foundational book to read. There's another book called Atomic Habits that is really nice as well, and it's about how the smallest habits, the ones that you don't notice, have a tremendous impact on long-term and short-term gain. Also, for fun, I reread this book recently, The Year in the Mirror. If you know me, you know I'm French, and I love my country. I live in the U.S. though. I'm French, and I've got American citizenship. So I guess I have both citizenships. But the French culture is fairly unique, and so if I want to laugh, I reread this. This is basically a British, not journalist, but a British ad executive that moves to France and describes the French habits pretty poorly. He doesn't describe them poorly. He describes them accurately, but they're pretty bad. And then, of course, got a few French books for everyone. I have to do this. One is L'étranger, The Stranger. I think that's also a book that you read.
Yeah.
And this Baudelaire book, if you're into French literature, is poetry, French poetry is an essential. And then, if that's not enough, here's another book that I read. I try to read one little passage before I go to bed every day. This is the Book of General Ignorance. It's super funny. It's little chapters. Basically, the author takes a bunch of questions, so things that we think we know, and he actually breaks them down and explains to you that you don't know them. And the reason for why I like it is because in our field, in the world of data and analytics, often we think we know a lot, but what actually changes the trajectory is the stuff you don't know, or the stuff that you think you know that actually you don't know. And so this book is a great reminder of that, and I read a little bit of it every day. So those are my book recommendations.
Wow, especially General Ignorance. That one sounds really interesting. So what's your favorite book that you read last year?
The favorite book that I read last year is actually not this one. I think I might have it up here. Yeah, actually I have it up here. Let me pull that one up. Is this book here. So it is How to Fail at Almost Everything and Still Win Big. This is written by Scott Adams. You know the Dilbert characters? And he has a knack for simplifying things, and it's really refreshing. Basically, it's a book about success and how he's failed so many times, but he writes it and explains it in such a simple, funny way to follow that it just makes the book super interesting. I tried to read the book that he wrote after this, which is called Loser Think, and that one is less entertaining than this one. So this one, if you're on vacation or you have a long weekend, this is a really great book to read. I think I've read it a couple of times. I have it on audio as well. So if my eyes get tired, I can listen to it.
Yeah. Oh, that book sounds like it would be really good. I'm going to put it on my to read list. Yeah, I think my favorite one last year was War and Peace. I had been meaning to read it, and so I attacked it during quarantine, and I do not regret it at all. It was a great book.
That's a big book.
It
I had the
is.
same experience with the Hamilton book where we went to see the play with my family and I really loved it and I started reading the book, but I did not manage to go all the way to the end because it was just a gigantic book. So kudos to you for finishing such a gigantic piece of work.
Thank you. It was worth it. But yeah, I've done that with a couple other books that are really big as well. But yeah, I love to read. I've been trying to get more into tech books as well. And like more like self-help or psychological books, more nonfiction books. And I've been enjoying it. So I've been taking some of your book recommendations and reading them too. So
That's awesome. There's a lot of people in the community. There's Krishna, there's Christina in the community. We kind of tag each other on LinkedIn. So I'll make sure I figure out a way to introduce you to them because they have great recommendations. I think Christina reads a book a week. And
that's
so
crazy.
if you're looking for somebody to kind of connect with, I think she lives in Spain now, but she's moving back, I think, soon. But yeah, lots of great ways to meet people in the industry. We talk about a lot of work related things. And then when we connect on things like this, it's kind of an interesting interesting perspective on that person. So yeah, I'll definitely connect you at least with Krishna and Christina. That's who comes to mind right now.
Thank you. I look forward to that. So I could talk about books for like hours, but so that I don't bore everyone else, I won't. So why don't you tell me how you got into data and analytics?
Yeah, it's a great question. So the way I got into this space, it was really early in my career. So I'm French. If you hear an accent, and you're wondering where I'm from France. I grew up in France, my native language. I studied there. I studied in Europe first. I went through the UK, University of Westminster, and then I went to Germany, and then graduated from that and came to the US. And then when I was done with my studies, I came back from the US to France, and I worked for this company called Decathlon. Decathlon is this sports retailer. Think about it, it's more than just a retailer because they also manufacture sports goods. And I was into sports big time, I still am. And so it was the perfect company for me to work with because I had both my passions on sports and as well as, getting involved in tech and related how retailers work, because retailers often are at the bleeding edge of how to use data to create promotions, understand customer experience, and so forth. And there we were deploying a system called the SAP HR and ERP systems, and that's how I got into how SAP was functioning and so forth. So I started with that. I started getting really a good handle on how enterprise applications were working. And then from that, I moved to the US where I worked for a couple of startups when I was in the application virtualization, still related to analytics and the virtualization layer. That company was bought by Symantec. I then moved to Business Object. Complete coincidence. I was in the Silicon Valley and I met the founder who happens to be French. Bernard Yoto is his name. And we talked at an event and it turned out he was hiring. And so that was right when the company was really accelerating. Business Objects was this French company that was basically, the way to think about it was an analytical layer on top of Oracle databases. That's where Bernard worked before starting Business Objects. And that really was kind of the start of my career in the data analytics space here, where I got really involved. Business Objects, went public. I got to work with Chris Karen, who was my boss at Business Objects, and then brought me with him to Microsoft. So I spent 7 years in Seattle. And from there, I developed my network, ended up, helping start 3 data analytics company startups, 2 of which sold. And that's how I ended up going through. After the startups, went to Oracle, and now I'm at Google. So I've touched super small companies. One of them I was number 7. Mid-sized companies, just kind of going to growth like a Business Object, and then really large ones like the Microsoft and the Oracle.
Wow. So you have been at all different sizes of companies and all different stages too.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Which one do you like the best?
It's a ton of fun. It's really tough to answer that question because I think I like them for different reasons. The super small I really like because you feel like you're really like at the very beginning of creation of and you're really innovating, and you're trying to find a product market fit. And that's a really tough problem to solve. The majority of startups fail. And so when you have a success, it's super rewarding. And then when you have the opportunity to be early on in the first 5 employees, and the company grows, like in my case, the one where I started was very early, ended up being 150, 200 people. So it's really nice to kind of go there. The mid-sized companies, especially when they go through hyper growth and they become IPO, that's super exciting because you feel like you've definitely established product market fit, but you're not ready. You never feel like you're ready. I had a friend who used to tell me, if you feel like we're going too fast, we're going at the right speed. And so that's kind of what I would say.
I like
in the
that.
mid-size companies, like, don't even feel bad about the fact that you feel like you're behind, because that's how it's supposed to go. It's like you've now established product market fit, and it's just going to take off like a rocket. And that's really what happened in business objects. And the large ones, the reason for I like the large ones is because now you're in a different ball game where you have the opportunity to impact the lives of millions of people. And so it's super rewarding, the companies like Microsoft or Google, where one feature, maybe one small feature that you think, is not a big deal. And then you start talking to customers and you realize it completely changed their lives. Like last week, I was talking to a company and they said, you won't believe it. Like my queries are going 10 times faster than they ever were. Here are all the things that we can do. We can innovate faster, because in the past, we would run this query and would forget the question by the time it'd come back. And so you don't realize, I think, once you build the small features and you're surrounded with your groups and your tribes inside the company, you think it's a big deal, but I don't think you realize the human impact that it has until you start talking to these customers. And so I like, great structures like Google, for instance, because we can impact, something that's simple, we can impact and make the lives of millions of people much better. So it's just a different thing to like about each phase.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I can see where a small company, your impact is large within the company, but at a larger company, your impact is large within the community, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is your role at Google? I know that you do this, weekly update, Power Week, which is, part of your outreach to people, but maybe talk about that and the other parts of your role.
Yeah, so what I run at Google is something that is called outbound product management for data analytics. And so essentially, it's all the functions that you think about being outwards to the various communities. So for instance, my team, we work on what we call market signals. Essentially, how do we get feedback from customers, partners, and analysts? We also work on go-to-market. How do we make sure that we've optimized the experience for customers to basically procure, deploy our products? And we, get this feedback into the roadmap so we can go out and build the best products we can. So in my job, the way I say it is 3 words. It's customers, customers, customers. We really try to understand the customers, understand what they need so we can feed them into products. We also try to understand their experience once they're interested, how they're experiencing and adopting the products in ways that makes their job better. In a way, I think about my role sometimes as I'm in the career management world, where my job is to make sure you're promoted. And so how do I do that? Well, I make sure
Thank
that
you.
the product that we've built is the right one, that it's aligned to your problems. And as you're trying to solve your problems and be successful at your own career, that we're not creating artificial barriers that just, get in the way of you trying to achieve your mission. And so that's kind of how I think about our job. There's a lot of things, of course, that we touch, but that's kind of how I think about it. And that's how it got me to this community Power Week thing that I do every Sunday, is because ultimately, there are 3 values of working with our community. First, we wouldn't be anything without our customers, our partners, and folks like you. And so, we have to make sure that we provide value to you guys all the time. And the way I think we do it is in 3 ways. One is we make sure you always have the latest and greatest information, because we have the benefit of talking to a wide range of customers and community members, so we can extract the signals for ourselves. But if we share them back with you, I think you can be successful as well. We also want to hear from you. and you are dealing at your own organization with issues that we might never be able to experience ourselves. And so part of building a strong product is being able to see problems through your eyes. So the more I can listen to you, the more I can see problems the way you're seeing them. And then the third value is kind of what we're talking about at the beginning on connecting you to folks that have similar passion. Is I view my job as making sure that you can connect with other folks. Malcolm Gladwell has this book where he talks about personalities, and I feel like the types of people I'm hiring is connectors. It's people that are basically making sure, like, oh, Alexa's interested in that. I want to make sure she finds her tribe and she finds her people that also like the same thing. And you might be able to connect you to 5 other people, 10 other people. And if I do that, then I can step back and then watch the community essentially guide me. And so that's how we think about our job here. I know I haven't talked about software. We do build software, but the software has a purpose, and this purpose is making sure that we can help you be successful. So that's kind of the idea. Yeah. I realized that in your question, I actually explained what the Power Week was. I explained the why, but I didn't explain what it was.
Yeah,
please do. You want me to do that?
Of course.
So yeah, basically the Power Week is super easy. It's an update that I do every Sunday, and I do it from my car. And I take a look at the top 5 stories in the data, AI, and analytics space that happened in the week prior. And the way it got to me, I think this past week was the 90th the 90th week that I did this kind of and I've done this every weekend. I've really, it's kind of a commitment that I made to the community. And the reason for why I did it once, and I wanted to see if it was going to resonate with people. And the amount of feedback that I got was really quite insane. And so I was looking for an easy way to connect. Also, I realized that our lives are very busy. We're all reading stuff. We all, might be overwhelmed with what's important, what's not. And so what I do is throughout the week, of course, I read things. You would send me things to highlight. Other community members send me things to highlight. And so throughout the week, I just kind of collect these things. I read them myself, and I just give you a quick digest, which I think if you listen to it, it's like 7 to 9 minutes. You can listen to me, and it gives you kind of overall, hey, here's what you might have missed this week. It's never a promotional opportunity. So if you're wondering, is Bruno talking to me about Google products from his car on Sundays? That's absolutely not what's happening there. I will never talk to you about any products or solutions. I'm just talking about stuff that's passionate to me. Of course, it's going to be about data and analytics because that's what I'm passionate about. But that's essentially it. So it's the summary of what the community told me mattered to them throughout the week prior. One of my friends, Merv Adrian, who's an analyst at Gartner, dubbed it the CarCast because it's not really a podcast. There's not a lot of production. I just essentially get in my car, I have a few notes, I put my phone on, I record it, and then I post it. So literally, the production takes me about 15 minutes. Now, I do put some thinking into what it is that I want to share with you, but that's the idea. It's simple for me to do, hopefully provides great value to you. And so the best way that people can follow me is just connect with me on LinkedIn so you get on your feed, or you can subscribe to it on YouTube.
Yeah, it's great. I encourage everyone to do that. So how long has this type of role been available at Google? Is it something that's more recent, or is it something that's been there for a while? And what I'm wondering is so why is this important, right? Like building this community, what impact does it have?
Yeah, it is a new role. So it's a role that started about a year ago. So I've been now at Google for 6-7 months or so. And the reason for what was created is it's a role that was just simply missing. Other companies like Oracle and Microsoft have some equivalent of that. It might not be called outbound product management for them. It might be called something else. But the idea is that to be the glue between the customers and our engineering organization. Essentially, we have product managers at the company who focus a lot of their time with the engineering team, making sure they're building the right features and the right foundation and so forth. And then the outbound team basically spends the majority of their time with the partners, the customers, the analysts, the press, so we can get the signals And so the combination of both an inbound product manager and an outbound product manager kind of creates this perfect combination, if you will, this perfect cocktail. So we can then build the products that we need, build the whole product. Another book that I really like, I'm going to go get it because you asked me to talk about books early on, is this one. I encourage everyone to take a look at it. It's called Crossing the Chasm. I don't know if you see it here. Crossing the Chasm, Jeffrey Moore, and it talks about this idea of the whole product.
Yeah.
When we think about a customer consuming the value of our product, at the center, of course, is the software product, but around it is a set of services and complementary solutions. And there's so many more things that are beyond just the bits itself. And so that's why we are creating an organization that maps to that. So we have the perspective from the outside in, the perspective from the inside, and then we broaden the issue by looking at, okay, what really is the ecosystem for solving this problem? It's kind of like if you're selling a car, it's rare that people say, you know what, I want precisely this brand with these tires and so forth. No, they're solving a transportation issue, and there are many ways to solve that transportation issue. So same thing in data analytics. Like nobody's saying I've identified the solution, and the solution is positively this type of data warehousing product and so forth, and I'm looking for that brand. Originally the problem they have is trying to get value from my data. I have a lot of data that's stored over here, and this little gets to the end, and even less than that actually gets, translated into value. How do I solve that? And that's how we come in and we start thinking about, okay, well, let's take a company in your industry that has succeeded. What have they done? What does the whole product look like for them? So I might have over-answered your question, but that's kind of what OPM,
that's great.
Outbound Product Management, is about.
Yeah, it sounds very valuable. So since the position was made a year ago, I'm guessing you started Google 1 year ago, right?
I started about 6 or 7 months ago when so our CEO Thomas Gurian started that function and said really Google Cloud needs to have this function, and so they started defining it. I think they hired a few OPMs before I showed up, but now we have many more. But I think I was one of the first few. I wrote, in fact, the first thing I did, I think in the first few weeks, is I wrote what is outbound product management to kind of help crystallize, because I'd done it before. I'd done it both at Microsoft and at Oracle. So I could at least basically say, okay, this is how, it's done somewhere else. And then, of course, from that, got contribution from everyone in the team. And then we kind of morphed it into what does it look to do outbound product management at Google.
So you're still pretty new at Google. What aspects of Google do you enjoy?
Oh, there are many, many things. I think the first one is the mission, right? And so if I go back to why I like these big, large structures, is because we have the opportunity to, impact the lives and better the lives of many, many, many people across the world. So I love that. I love the scale of that. I love the values of the company. Years before I was working at Google, I read a few books that Eric Schmidt had written on the Google culture. And I thought, man, this is kind of really interesting, the way they're thinking about their values, the way they're operationalizing their value. I'd read, the same from other companies, like for instance, Amazon's got their 14 principles and so forth. So I was really into trying to figure out, okay, culture and how do you operationalize culture? And I think Google has done a really great job not only doing it, and I see it in action by being an employee, but also sharing that and communicating that. I think Google, in fact, has also shared, what they've learned in terms of how, can teams be productive and so forth. And so I like the mission, I like the culture, and then I like the products. I mean, I like I wasn't an Android person before. I wasn't, I have all types of products at home. I have an Alexa, and then of course I've got Google Home, and I've got all these different things. But now that I'm in the inside and I'm seeing the philosophy of how these products are built, I think it's really quite amazing. And it's not surprising that these products have such high quality, is because we tend to be the user of the technology before we put it into market. And I think that's something you can't, fabricate. You can't, you talk about having customer empathy and so forth, but if you also are the customer, you have the same pain that the people you're trying to build a solution for have. And so that's really unique. And so I think about products like BigQuery, for instance, or products like Dataflow. I mean, these are technologies that were, in the case of BigQuery, were used for 10 years inside Google. In the case of Dataflow, built from the community up with Beam. And so it's really kind of a unique culture how Google builds their products, by being open and embracing the community, and by also being a user of the technology themselves. I love that. And then the final thing, which connects, I think, probably to culture, is the people. The Google culture is really super interesting. It's very open. It's very transparent. It's very collaborative. I'll give you an example. The first few weeks when I started, my boss told me, he said, so how's everything? Are you ramping up easily and so forth? And I said, the thing that's great is good news and bad news. The good news is I can go inside our internal search system and I can find everything. And that is really rewarding because I don't have to feel like I'm asking stupid questions. I can literally go inside our system, search, how is this product built? How are these functions rewarded? Whatever. And I will find the answer. Super transparent. The flip side of that is that now I feel like I'm reading the internet. Now I feel like the content I'm finding is super helpful and it leads to another question. Literally, I could be spending days reading, just consuming the amount of information that we have. In fact, over the Christmas break, I was taking some training and I was planning on taking training for one product. I ended up taking training for the 3 or 4 products because one training led to the next and I got more and more curious. But what was great is I could find all this stuff. I don't have to call anyone. I don't have to email anyone. All the information is highly available. And so I like that a lot because I feel like I've been here now, of course, 7 months, but it feels like I've been here 7 years because of the amount of information the companies enable me to ingest and also turn that into, my own information to help others.
Wow, I'm happy for you. That sounds great. That was a great review of Google. I think they should probably give you a raise. So I'll let them know.
And I'm hiring. So if you're listening to this and you're interested, reach out to me. I'm hiring.
Sounds good. Okay, so let's talk a bit more about data and analytics. What role do you think data analytics is playing in tech today?
Yeah, I think I feel like we have the revenge of data and analytics. When I started in the space, this was over 2 decades ago, nobody really cared about us. Nobody really cared about the database or any of these things. I mean, I remember my first job, and it's like this back office stuff, the applications and the database. And now I feel that's the only thing that people are talking about. And I think the reason for that is because the economy's accelerated, and it's an extreme amount of competition around powerful insights. And so I think organizations increasingly have realized that data is the currency they have. People talk about data as the new oil and so forth. I don't like these analogies because, we consume all the oil that we produce, probably even more, and that's what's going to get us in trouble. In data, we don't consume 5% of the data that we create. And so, but I think that's the opportunity. So I think we have just scratched the surface on the data opportunity. It has a tremendous role in helping organizations modernize their business models. It has a tremendous role in helping people make better decisions. It has a tremendous role in helping us better the decisions that artificial intelligence is putting out there, right? So we think about the trend of augmented data management, augmented analytics. So people always think, oh my gosh, those machines are going to take over. I think a lot of what is happening is actually a very equal relationship between the machines helping us get better, but also us helping validate what the machines are doing. And so I think we're going to see over the next 20 years the type of innovation, data-powered innovation, that we could never imagine, right? Just kind of like what we saw with the phone. 20 years ago, nobody would think they could walk around with something that's more powerful than the computer they had. And I think the type of data innovation that we will have in 20 years, we can't even imagine what they are now. So I would say it's a great field to get into. It's finally nice that more people are paying attention to it, because it can make or not make a future of a company.
What do you think the biggest challenges are ahead to get us to this kind of place with data and analytics?
I think there's a few challenges. I think the first one that everyone talks about is the issue around culture, right? So it's really uncomfortable to do the things that are counterintuitive. And often, what I say, the magic with data is when it tells you something you don't know, but you don't know about yourself. And so imagine, being confronted with that on a daily basis. If you have intelligent systems that are telling you not only just insights that you might not have thought about, but maybe insights about you that you might have thought about, it's really uncomfortable, right? So I think in general, getting to a culture where it's accepting insights, accepting this refinement of what is reality, and then kind of becoming hyper realist because we have the information, is probably the first barrier. The second one is the maturity of the technology and how they're deployed. If you look over the last 20, 30 years, we've tried multiple types of attempts on how to organize ourselves around data. We started in the first phase with everything centralized, and now we are servicing the business user. And that didn't work. It was too slow. We didn't have the cloud back then, so it was really difficult to scale. Then we switched and we said, okay, now empower everybody. Everybody's a business analyst. And now just created a chaos, because now you had your truth, I had my truth, I had my tools, and it was a chaos. And so I think now we're in the third phase where we're trying to figure out, okay, there are more capabilities that are just available as services and microservices. And the cloud's enabling us to do that. There is people that are coming out of college that are much more educated on data engineering, data science, and so forth, so they can do more. So now we have to find, okay, in the next 30 years, what type of relationship do we want to have with data and data technology? And I don't think that we know. I mean, of course, some companies are exceptional. They're building data teams and data products themselves, but that's really not the majority. I think I was looking at a stat the other day where 80% of the type of data work that people are doing is descriptive still. So we've not gotten to a point where you and I can get access to recommendations about things that's going out through our life, or things that are being done for us that we tend to spend time on, and maybe that time should be spent somewhere else. I mean, the best examples that I have is when I type text, now Google Docs, email, in my docs, it starts to guess where I'm going next. Super helpful. In spreadsheet, we now have in sheets the smart fill, right? So you start going, putting a formula, and it says, oh, I see what you're trying to do. Do you want to apply this formula to everything else? So those are examples of things like, oh my gosh, can you imagine if more of these things could be suggested to you, how much more effective you could be? So that's going to help with, I think, the adoption and the maturity of technology. So culture, maturity of technology for sure are the top two barriers, I think, to get us there. But we will get there.
Great answer. It kind of reminds me of, I was talking to my grandmother about Netflix. She just got it. And she said, I don't know why they keep giving me all these recommendations of things they think I want to watch. And I go, but don't you like it? And she goes, yeah. I think it's that the relationship with it. It feels almost weird when someone's telling you you like something, but you do like it. So it kind of helps you out.
You didn't know that about yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's the thing is that, and Spotify does the same thing, right? Pandora does the same thing. These are both customers we work with, and this is incredible, power. And if you think about it, why did we not do that before? Is because before our view of the world was extremely siloed, right? So you had your data about yourself, and you were your only source of what you thought you might like. But it turns out that you're not alone in the world. We now have information for people that are kind of like you. They exhibit the same patterns. They have similar preferences. And so, you don't have to take the recommendation, but wouldn't your experience be made better? I mean, the amount of music that I have discovered because of Spotify tell me, oh, you've been listening to this, try that. I don't know how I would have discovered these artists, right? And that's the other piece of it, is that by making ourselves better, we're now creating opportunities both for you to have a better experience, but also for the artists that otherwise would have never been discovered. And so same thing for
Yeah.
Netflix, same thing for websites that are creating great product recommendation solutions for people. It's about customer experience and essentially realizing our potential on both sides, on the people consuming and on the people producing.
Yeah, shout out to Blue Core. That's what we do. Send emails with
Yeah.
recommendations in them. So yeah, exactly. So you talk to a lot of people, and what do you find that people are most excited about in data and analytics?
There are quite a few things that people are excited about. I'll give you a few examples. The first thing that I see people being really excited about is new interfaces into data. And so, if you think about the evolution of data, we've kind of have had to have a relationship with data that either was in rows and columns, or was in SQL, or was in spreadsheets. So it kind of required this, specialized knowledge. Even building a dashboard, even if you're building graphs and maybe you don't need SQL for that, it's still a specialized function. Well, now what's happening is with natural language processing, you now are the interface into data. When I was at Microsoft, we had this product called Xbox, and we introduced this product called Kinect, which was one of the fastest growing products at the time. And Kinect was basically this camera that you would gesture to, and it would just play the game for you. And I feel like that's what people are really excited when we have this product called Data Q&A, and we show them, hey, you just type in your question, and the magic happens is that this question gets translated into SQL, and now this query comes back. We have a customer, a retailer, where you can go literally from Google Maps as a consumer into Google Maps, like, I'm interested in this store. I'm wondering if this store has this type of pasta. You essentially ask the store if they have like an assistant, like an intelligent assistant. The words you put into the assistant, and by the way, you could do this with your voice, with your Siri's translation or Android translation, so forth, your voice translation. You input that in, it gives you live inventory information, and it tells you what aisle it's in. Now, what's amazing about this is you had zero training. And I think that's what people are excited about. Like, the new interfaces for analytics are going to be consumer-like. They're going to be decomposed across multiple scenarios. It's no longer going to be a dashboard. It's going to be you're walking up somewhere, you're pointing your phone at this, and now you're getting a ton of augmented intelligence about this particular item that you're looking at. You're now looking at a map, and you're like, I wonder if they have it. You can ask for it here. And so all these new interfaces that are intelligent, kind of rich data applications, if you will, I think are going to enable us to drive adoption, but also get people to fall in love with data, essentially, right? Because let's be honest here. Not many people are like you and I. They don't get excited when they see 10 lines of SQL, right? Or they don't get excited that they're going to spend the next 5 hours working with a spreadsheet. I do, but not many people are like me, right? Thank God. And so these emotional experiences with data, I think, is what people are most excited about. At least the customers I'm talking to, that's what they want. They want to break through. I think the adoption of analytics today is about 30% in the organization. So imagine that, right? You're spending all that money, and 70%, 7 out of the 10 people this is pointing to are never going to use it. That's really kind of depressing. And so when we tell them, hey, look, we have a way to break through these barriers, they get really excited.
That makes me excited too. Also, I want to
Yeah.
be respectful of your time. I have a couple more questions, but if you're out of time, then we
Let's
can
do
wrap
it.
it up. Okay.
No, let's do it. Let's do it. Let me check here. Yeah, I have a few more minutes, so let's do it.
Okay. So, what are kind of the low-hanging fruit things that you think we can do better on now? Like, what are some pain points that people talk a lot with you about?
Yeah, so there are a few things that we could definitely do better on today. I think the first thing that we have to watch out for is the things that you and I might be passionate about might not be the things that everybody is passionate about. So I think starting with the audience in mind rather than our perspective, and I'm talking as a vendor or someone in the space, is always kind of an important rule to follow. Is I might be excited about SQL, I might be excited about this particular data warehousing feature or this data lake feature and so forth, but putting it into the context of customers in the community, I think, is more important. The other thing that we can do is create this culture of experimentation. There's still too many vendors in our space that ask for a very strong commitment from their community, their customers, and their prospects before they can experience the value. And so, for example, every week I publish what I call my data set of the week. And the reason for why I'm saying that is because we have all these data sets that are available for free for customers. We want them to play with it. And so we would love to see more companies doing that, because the more people do analysis, the more insights we'll get, the more people will get interested into this data analytics world. And so, if I think about the future, it's a world that's certainly a lot more flexible and a lot more open to collaboration across the industry. I think we need more of that. We need companies that maybe were started in an area where it wasn't about sharing and being open and so forth. They need to start moving there, because I think it's getting in the way of innovation. And certainly it's a foundational belief for us, this idea of being open. And you see it, for instance, I think we're the only vendor really that has this multi-cloud perspective. But I think it would help the industry, it would help the companies that are trying to be successful to see more vendors be like that. I know that sounds like I'm inviting competition into something that's unique about us, but I do believe that that's what customers want. We didn't go there because we were looking for an angle. We went there because customers were asking for it, and it just makes sense. And so that's what I'd like to see more of.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think they do a good job of that. It would be nice to, see everyone adopt the same kind of mindset. So
yeah, I mean, you look at open source, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of argument right now in the industry about how open source is being handled and so forth. And I look at some of our customers, you ask them, I always ask them this question when I talk to them, and say, why did you choose this? I want to hear from them why they didn't choose something else. And often this open conversation comes in across multi-cloud, but also comes in the way we embrace the open source community, and this idea that a customer can build something on our cloud and they have complete portability across the ecosystem. And so that also I would like to see more of, is more companies making bigger commitments to open source, so we can kind of all learn together. If we can do that, we're just going to pull everybody up, and there will be more opportunities for everybody else. Anything that's different from that, I think, is reducive of the industry and also the opportunity that we can all pursue together. And so, open, I think, is a big theme, and many companies, mm-hmm. I think, should take a page out of our playbook, because it would create so much more value for customers.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective. So there are a lot of different types of technology patterns and data analytics. What do you see people using a lot? I know, for example, streaming platforms is one, things like that. What do you see people really getting into now for their data pipelines?
Yeah, so obviously the real time, this idea of, it's so funny because 10 years ago, this concept of real time was, it's write time, and write time is once a day, or maybe once a week. I mean, I remember working with this company, they were doing their weekly report, and it hit me like, wait a second, so today's Wednesday, you're not going to know what you sold today until next Monday? That sounds like, who would run, but the reality is that was the norm. And so now we have switched, I think, the mentality that anything that's not real time is just not going to work. And so streaming platforms, real-time decision-making, real-time recommendations, in the area of financial governance, for instance, we see people, evolving from just monitoring and managing to now recommending how to use the platform, the areas where they can optimize the use of the infrastructure and so forth. And so the combination of both real-time platforms and intelligence on top of those platforms is really, I think, what we're going to see people pushing to, because now we have the scale. Now we have the technologies available, we have the cloud platform that's available, and we have the need of organizations realizing, if I just optimize by a millisecond, I'm going to create like 3% of value, and that 3% could be millions. And so, we see this everywhere. The scenarios like anomaly detection is a great example of real-time and intelligence put at work, right? So anomaly detection across, a network, for instance, is a great example. Real-time fraud detection is another great example of, streaming and intelligence at work, identifying outliers, locking a credit card because we've identified, okay, some pattern that is, out of whack. Real-time price optimization is another great example where we see people, and not just the companies that were born online, but also the companies that were maybe brick and mortar companies that now have to develop a muscle there. This, understanding in real time and this decision making in real time is, I think, what we're going to see a lot of companies competing on, and certainly we see a lot of excitement on that. I don't know what do you see? I mean, I know you're a great observer of what's going on in the space, and so for me, it's real time and predictions that I see a lot. But maybe you're seeing other trends.
No, it's funny because that's what I see a lot of too. I mean, I gave that talk on the recommendation service at Google Cloud Next, and then I moved teams to help build the analytics platform, which is streaming too. So that really resonates with me as well. It's a lot of what, I see too. I see a lot about streaming, of course, and I was wondering if it was the same for you, or if maybe I was in my own little bubble. But yeah.
No, you're not. Companies of all sizes are really looking hard at how they can get information in faster, how they can process them faster. I was just talking to a customer, like, we increased the speed of processing in real time by 10x. So it just changed their world. But then now that I have this knowledge in real time, processing in real time, and I'm getting some insights, how can I automate the operation of the decision making is a big one. The other component is the platforms that we see, the data volume that we see is really quite amazing. We're reaching numbers here that really even 5 years ago, I don't think we could have imagined. And so I think the combination of these three things, probably the insane amount of volume, the speed, and the intelligence on top of that, I think, if you're not looking at that and you're listening to us, pick up a couple of books, because those are going to be defining trends, I think, in the next 5 years.
Exciting. So what are some of the most unique ways you see people solving problems in this space?
Unique ways, there are a lot of really super creative folks with our customers. And so I'll give you a few examples. So we have an example of this company. I can't give you their names, but basically you'll be able to understand kind of the use case that's in the transportation business. And so basically they're able to automate the routing of their drivers to save on gas consumption. So it's a great example because one is, and the insights are, once you have them, you realize they're really obvious, but I don't know how we didn't think of it. And I think the reason for why you didn't think of that is because maybe you have the data at scale and you didn't think that proposing this answer would actually have a material impact, but it does. In the case of this company, it's millions of dollars being saved, primarily because of this creative one move that they're doing on their routes that enables them to understand it. I was talking to a customer, this is an American company, I was talking to a customer in a similar industry that was telling me, in the transportation business, one of the challenges is that if I'm delivering something to you, Alexa, and let's say you are living on the other side of town, I can measure distance. But what if you're in a highly populated area, like a Singapore or Hong Kong or anything like this, where there's a lot of people in skyscrapers? And it turns out they've found that their drivers or their delivery folks are spending more time in elevators going up and down than to go to the location. And so they came up with intelligent ways to figure out, how do I optimize that so my driver or the person delivering the food or whatever item that's delivering has an accurate arrival time. And so I never thought of that. I mean, when they told me about it, I'm like, of course you're going to predict it. But, I don't live in a building that has 55 floors, but I could see that if you're the restaurant here and you're going to deliver it at a particular window, maybe it's like a rush hour at 12 where everybody's taking the elevator, or maybe it's at breakfast time where everybody's leaving, whatever have you, then your prediction of the arrival time of this item has to be affected quite dramatically. And
That's
so
fascinating.
it's kind of those
It's
examples,
the
they're
travel
putting like
time.
real life examples.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like real life examples that are obvious when you look at them, but you would have never built an algorithm for that. You would have said, well, yeah, you live 15 minutes away from this location. Food's going to get there in 15 minutes. Well, what happens if it's 8 a.m. and the wait for the elevator is 10 minutes? Now, all of a sudden, you're going to get food in 25 minutes. And so those are interesting use cases. I mean, every week, I talk to customers every day, and every week there's a nugget like this where when they explain it to you, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it. And so we go back to, that's the magic of data. It's like it's telling you something that you didn't know, and sometimes it's things you didn't know about yourself. I experienced those situations, but I never thought about changing what I do based on this particular insight.
Yeah, I bet it's great to hear all those stories.
Yeah.
So
it's really, I think it energizes you because you're working all day on products and solutions and so forth. And so when you see the impact it has on people's lives and their companies and their careers, it's really kind of, you feel like, you're having an impactful role in the industry, and you're kind of inventing what could be going on in our space.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of value in that. That's really valuable and really fun too, to talk to people about their experience. Yeah, so thank you for coming. Do you have any last remarks that you like to add?
Thanks for having me. I want to, first congratulate you on starting this. This is
Thank you.
Alexa's input AI. I like that. I think that that was super creative. I'd come up with my own analogy of AI. I often joke, and I encourage people to think about this. When you think about artificial intelligence, we say AI equals artificial intelligence. I'd say think about it in two different words you could think of: applied and invisible. When you think about the value of artificial intelligence, you're going to enjoy it most. It's going to provide you the best value when it's applied to your workflow, it's applied to what it is that you're doing, and when it's invisible, where basically you're getting value from it and you had no idea that you were. And so that's kind of my parting words on AI is there are many ways you can play with the acronym, just like you did with Alexa's input, and you can also think about it as applied and invisible.
That's great. Thank you. I very much enjoyed it.
Well, thank you for having me, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds good.